My name is Sheldon Louis. I'm from the Okanagan Indian Band on the north end of Okanagan Lake. More specifically, where we live is in Okanagan, the place where the grizzly bear had killed them. And yeah, I just moved back, spent a couple years in West Bank with my family. We moved back home to our home reserve. Been there last 2 years. So I born and raised on Okanagan Indian Band. Spent a lot of my initial years watching my father and other family member, Barb Marchand, do artwork, and was watching them as a kid that really pushed me or inspired me to want to follow the arts. I think when I first had seen my family members, my father, Jerry Louis, and Barb Marchand, and my auntie Lucy Louis, a number of family members, it just was so many family members or artists around me. And at 6 years old, they had all came together in community. It was about early 80s. And they did a community art exhibit of the members in the community, and I can remember wandering around just being in amazement of all the art, and went home that day and I was like, I want to be an artist. And my parents, like anything, they kind of, okay, but as time went on, it didn't change. Over the years, I can remember being a little kid and bringing artwork drawn in crayon and $1,000 price tag written in the corner and trying to sell it to family members, at a very early age. And then, my dad and other family members, they just nurtured that over the years. And we always had art supplies in the house, always watching my dad do many different mediums. And so, just being immersed in it all the time, it was just a natural thing. And I think around 10 or 11, somewhere around there, I started getting asked to create art for organizations, different logos. So at 11, I think I sold my first piece of artwork for a logo design at 11 to one of the local youth groups. But it was that point where I was like, okay, you can do this. It is possible. You spend years of family not really being sure what's going to come of this artwork, and so yeah, at that point it was really affirming that, hey, this is really possible, right? And then from there, I continued doing work at 18, 19. I'd had an opportunity to train under Michelle Lockery in Vernon for the downtown Vernon mural project, 2001, I think. And from there, she really taught me to paint and really mentored me in murals at that age. But at that age, I was still heavy in addiction, and it didn't go anywhere at that time. The addiction kind of was what my life was focused on at that time, and then around 30, I sobered up. Had again, Barb Marchand and Lynn Phelan approached me and said, "Look, we want to start an arts collective. Will you join us?" And so I joined as a visual lead artist for that one, and then became the lead eventually, and started curating a community in the community space at the Vernon Art Gallery every year for emerging and young artists who are looking for their kind of first opportunities and stuff. So did that, and this year has been the very first year that I've actually went full time. Professional artist starting in April, and so it's been extremely busy. I spent 6 years working in chief and counsel for the Okanagan Indian Band, and so for 6 years my art kind of was a bit on the back shelf, and there was a lot of different reasons why I couldn't create for some of the art, because we were in business with some of these in partnerships, and so a lot of conflict of interest that wouldn't allow me to create artwork during that 6 years. So come April, when everybody knew I wasn't coming back, I just got flooded with art requests, and so this painting that we did here was one of the earlier requests after I was finished. Yeah, so this commission for the Kelowna Art Gallery, when I was approached and was aware that it was going to be part of the public art collection after it's exhibited, I really wanted to make sure that when people come into that public art collection, say 50 years from now, say 100 years from now, and it's still there, that people can look at that piece of art and really identify it with place, with our people, and within the nation as well too. Part of the reasoning, I think about 10 years ago, for creating the Comma Creative Collective was to showcase interior art, to come in and really give a platform, because here in the interior, what we seen promoted or in the public kind of realm was your more well-known Indigenous art styles, your form line from West Coast, Northwest Coast, Coast Salish, your woodlands, and then your Inuit styles of art, and very beautiful works. But they were some of the very early movers at the time, from Indigenous cultures across Canada that were really making a mark and being recognized within the Canadian arts kind of culture. And so we always wanted to see more representation of our own people in the interior, and showcase what we as artists here have to offer as well too. So in choosing the subject's a root digger. It's a tama, a grandma, who's out digging roots and using a very specific implement, a pizza from the interior peoples, the Shquatin, Inclehaton, the Seal, and then down south you have your Wenatchee and your Methow and Spokanes, all of us within that kind of cultural group. That pizza is a very prominent implement, I guess, and visual of identifying who we are. Unlike West Coast, our art was more in our textiles, more in our twining and our bags and hat making, in our implements and our basketry. The West Coast, we always talk about how they're a very rich culture living on the sea. They really had a very abundant food source and didn't have to travel to the lengths that we did every season to harvest. So we were not necessarily nomadic, but we traveled throughout the territory to gather foods every season. And so a lot of our time was spent in food prep and traveling, right? And so we wanted to bring in some of those pieces to show what the Syilx and the interior culture was. And so early on, my first root digger painting was for the Kelowna General Hospital. I believe Interior Health and the Okanagan Nation Alliance had created an agreement to exhibit Syilx public art, and the very first root digger I created was for Kelowna General Hospital. It sits in their foyer. And for me, it was a shift of a new look to my art, a new content, something that's a lot more culturally based to us, And so that one was very kind of iconic in where I am today with the style. And so I've used the root digger image quite heavily in a lot of different pieces throughout the interior. And so it's kind of, I don't know, I guess it would be something like, maybe like how Warhol came in his repetition and his, not necessarily oversaturating, but, really creating imagery, making it iconic through its repetitiveness, right? And wanting to use that image to really represent our people, because it is something, any of our people, whether you're in the state of Washington or anywhere in the interior, and you see that image, like our people are going to just be like, whoa, like, hey, that's us, right? And a lot of it is about seeing yourself in that artwork as well too. And so that piece is very reminiscent of my grandmother, my mama Irene, just taking bits and pieces of remembering her when I was little. And I remember her throwing on this old raggedy, work plaid vest, and she'd have her apron on from cooking in the morning, and she'd have a dress on and some gumboots, and she'd be going out to the garden, or she'd be going out feeding the horses, and just taking bits and pieces kind of that connection to her, and really showcasing it in how that root digger is dressed. It's got the more contemporary, I think, look where I think the one in Kelowna was definitely around the settler time because of obviously the dress that they're in, but coming in and showing that that practice in a contemporary look, it still shows that we're still here. Our culture is still here. All these traditions and protocols and beliefs and values and food systems even, everything is still in place from, thousands of generations of our people, right? And to really showcase that as well too is like a big piece of showing not only to our people, but to everyone else around here that look, through everything we've gone through, these practices are still surviving. They're still a very big part of who we are, even though we may live in cities and in homes now. Those traditional pieces are still part of who we are. And so that's a big part of coming in and taking those practices and bringing them forward into a contemporary context. Yeah, it's a really great feeling to have that acknowledgement and that validation as an artist. My first public commission for the public art collection was UBCO last year. So again, coming in and having an institution like them recognize me, I've done a lot of work for them over the years. And then as well, Kelowna, because the Kelowna Art Gallery during COVID had been a big supporter for me at that time. Very difficult time during COVID to be an artist, but through exhibiting in the Kelowna airport under the Kelowna Art Gallery, it was a huge opportunity where my piece is exhibited for a year. We extended it because of the low numbers of people moving through the airport. We wanted to get as much attention as possible. And in doing so, that exhibit, Air Canada named my exhibit in Kelowna Airport #1 in the world in Air Canada airports. And so, Kelowna Art Gallery coming in and supporting me like that and creating that opportunity. And the funny thing was I turned that opportunity down a handful of times over the years to exhibit in that space. And, I just, at the time, I didn't see the benefit of it. I was more stuck in, well, I need to make I need to make some money to pay my bills, starving artist, I need commissions. But coming in and getting that support from the gallery really, again, helped the marketing of it. The gallery's marketing team really put my name out there. That entire exhibit sold out, and then to come in and have the gallery, at that time we were discussing possibly taking one of those 5 and presenting it to the acquisitions committee at that time. But by the time we went to approach that, all of those paintings were already spoken for, and even though they were still on exhibit, I had buyers that were either traveling through or whatever they were doing, coming through the airport, dropping people off, and so they were already spoken for, and so we just said, well, we'll look at it down the road again, no big deal. And then so when they followed up this last time and made that request, I was really happy to have Kelowna come back and still hold true to that and say, look, we still want some of your work. It's for me, it's a big recognition that, and I don't know, I'm hoping that it's highlighting, I guess, the amount of impact, I guess, I'm having in the local arts scene here in Vernon, and having an impact on how I'm representing for our seal artists, and again doing what was done with Barb Marchand when she came in, and really her, and I think even maybe Noel Derrickson prior to her, those two really moving ahead seal art in the interior, coming in and being able to be, hopefully part of that legacy as well too, of being another of, there's so many amazing artists in our territory, and I hope that, they too get that opportunity, and that through seeing each other succeed like that we, we can lift each other up and really support growing that, I guess, that body of work amongst all of us in our nation here. I think the biggest thing is to know that there are amazing Indigenous artists, in the territory, and that we hopefully can start generating the interest in our art, so that way those of us who have been artists, for quite some time, that we can start being acknowledged. I'm grateful to be acknowledged, but I also want to see all these other artists that are in the nation feel that and earn that and get to that same place as well too, because being an Indigenous artist, unless you're in very key kind of areas, in the Vancouver area, in the Toronto area, around these larger city centers, it is a tough thing to gain and attain that type of acknowledgement, where people are seeing your work, where Indigenous artists can start to get that acknowledgement, so they too can start to climb that ladder, I guess, to being an acknowledged artist, so that way you can start, like I said, getting into these spaces where it just generates more and more talk, more and more interest, because it, as an Indigenous artist in the interior, we don't always get the same amount of support as non-Indigenous artists, and sometimes that's either based on maybe some of our content, or maybe sometimes, in some instances, maybe we don't have the letters behind our name to be seen in that light. But our Syilx artists are, many of them self-taught, many of them taught by some of the older artists in community, and it's kind of that thing of passing down to each other, and helping each other grow, right? So for one, getting that acknowledgement and hopefully opening doors for other artists. Two, to let people know that there is an Indigenous people here in this territory. This is Syilx territory. I know in my own community, we're maybe 20 minutes outside of Vernon, and you can go into Vernon, and some people there don't even realize that a local Indigenous community lives on the other side of the lake, you know, in this day and time. So again, using those visuals and using the educational pieces to really make people aware that, hey, we're here, this is our territory. And then two, generate discussions around traditional practice, traditional protocols, food sovereignty. You know, there's so much that is embedded in those, and that can come out as discussion pieces. You know, some of it can be political. You know, and oftentimes the work myself, my wife Chisekwa, that we make has a lot of very different layers, you know, to it. And a lot of times I share with people when talking about it is that if I went out front here and I was on a soapbox ranting and raving about, let's say, food sovereignty, people might not want to hear that. Get maybe some funny looks and maybe some not so nice comments as people walk by. But when you put those types of messages and those types of things kind of encoded into that art and into the imagery, people come into spaces like this and they can engage on their own level where they're safe, and they can say, oh, what's this about? And you can say, oh, well, I'm glad you asked. This is what this is about. This is what this means. And people engage much more openly when they're on a safer plane, right? And so, again, using it as discussion, using it to educate, using it to maybe create some allyship. You know, it's got so many different things that it can do and does do, but it's getting that door opened just so those conversations can happen is a big part of that. So coming into spaces where you have a number of different people from different walks of life, different parts of society come in, you can, through those engagements, spread some of that knowledge and some of that awareness outwards.